Yes, the conversations continue. This remains the podcast that's brought to you by GAIA Africa, a private members business club for women. And the 5-episode podcast series is sponsored by Pinnacle Oil and Gas, an indigenous oil and gas company. And this is episode 3. And episode 1, what did we talk about? We talked about human capital development. Episode 2, we talked about creating economic opportunities. Now we're talking about leveraging on technology. And all of this is around the area of ensuring that we do move the needle of women's presence, both in the corporate sector and in the general economic world of our world, especially Nigeria. We are leaving $26 million on the table around the world, and that shouldn't happen. And I have very diverse guests today because we have a male in the house. But I'm going to start with our guests who are signing in from the UK. I have Ms. Odunayo Eweniyi. Hello, how are you doing today, Odun?
Hi,
That's
I'm
good.
good, thank you.
Good to see you. Odun is the co-founder and chief operations officer for Piggyvest, the largest digital and investment platform in Nigeria. She previously co-founded pushcv.com, one of the largest job sites in Africa, with the largest database of pre-screened candidates. She's a board member of Village Capital, the most active supporter of impact-driven stage entrepreneurs in the world. And she was featured on Bloomberg Business Weekly's 2020 Bloomberg 50 list, an annual list of innovators, entrepreneurs, and leaders who have changed the global business landscape over the past year. Wonderful. It's good to have you, Odunayo. And I have Mrs. Adedoyin Odunfa. She's the managing director and chief executive officer of Digital Jewels. She is an African business leader and techpreneur with almost 30 years of professional practice, and she's focused on enhancing the strategic value of IT in organizations through value-adding interventions across the information value chain. She is a founder and group CEO of a company, a leading ITGRC consulting and capacity building firm, Digital Jewels Limited. It has branches in Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Rwanda, along footprint in 9 African countries. Quite an awesome CV. Nice to have you here, Doyin.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
Welcome. And the final person is Mr. Daniel Oparison. I hope I called it right. Oparison.
Oparison.
I had to be sure that it was not Okpa. He's the head growth and brand strategy for Paga. Am I correct on that?
Paga.
Paga. Okay. You see, I'll call it Paga. Daniel Oparison is a brand and business growth strategist. He's leveraging over a decade of experience in advertising, brand management, and human-centered consumer experience design to establish sustainable growth for businesses. He leads growth and brand strategy at Paga, covering business intelligence, integrated marketing, customer service experience, data analytics, advertising, human capital design, and Bugwe, and all of that. It's nice to have you all here. Now, we know that one of the areas that most of the women I've spoken to today has talked about, and one of the areas that concerns the GAIA women, is the fact that technology is one area we have to leverage if we have to move women up, right? And we also spoke about the fact that STEM is one area that women don't go. So I would like each one of you to take a minute to explain to me what you think about women's presence in that technological space. So I will start with Doyin, because Doyin is in the older category, and then Odunayo will take it right from there and say, have things changed? Let's go.
Okay, thank you. So clearly, women are underrepresented in technology. We know that, especially in Nigeria. And I've grown up in technology in Africa, and I've seen that many times I'm the only woman in the room. I remember in my younger days, I would start training programs, say, good morning, gentlemen, the female and the male toilets available, use whichever one you want, because there was no female in the room. But things have changed since then. Not in as much, we haven't made as much progress as I'd liked us to make, but they've changed a little bit. So if we look at it from the national point of view, prior to 2008, we didn't have a specific focus on the role of technology in economic development. And that changed when we had a Minister of Communications Technology who also happened to be a woman with a clear gender parity focus. Some may argue that the first discontinuity or disruption occurred before that, when the telecoms industry was liberalized and the GSM companies coming in. And that did have a profound impact because all of a sudden there was an industry that needed lots of people, male, female, as long as you are professional and you've got the competencies. And that, I think, sort of stirred up and opened the opportunity for tech, not just for women, but for professionals. And then we had the minister to put in some foundational principles, in place so that there would be development using technology and women will be part of the game. Mm-hmm. And then now we have a ministry who has renamed itself as the Ministry of Communications and Digital Transformation, I think it's called. Mm-hmm. Basically, to focus on the fact that technology has a role to be leveraged in economic development. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good start. Now, the truth is, whether or not it's focusing specifically on if technology is truly leveraged in economic development in Nigeria, everybody will benefit.
Not just the women.
So that's one major thing that I see. Now, do they have a specific focus on females? Well, what I've seen, they're full of programs, around, there's one thing now talking about digital girls, about female empowerment. Is it enough? Can it really move the needle, given the quantum of the challenge that we face in gender parity? Probably not. We probably need a lot more policy-driven type of vehicles to be able to close the gap that we face today. Mm-hmm. So that's just sort of the way that I see it. And I think that technology has all that's required for females to thrive. As I said, I have grown up with technology. And I'm sure you will agree with me when I say that better. I'm sorry, the only man who doesn't think so. So with technology, we're jumping multiple balls continuously. We're learning continuously. You're learning and you're unlearning continuously. You just can't afford to stop. And so I think that it's a ready-made field
for women.
However, needs to be done to encourage women to touch STEM. And I'm sure we're going to speak about that a little bit more. But I'd like to say, really, we have to start early.
Okay.
Right now, there is probably a quest for women who are professional women in technology. They're too few and too far between. To be able to address them.
Yes.
Sorry.
Just finish. So I'm sorry.
Yes. So I think that really we have to go and start from the beginning and look at how we can get more women to focus on STEM, and not only start with STEM, but grow with STEM. So we see them falling along the way. And then the number of graduates that you actually have in tech-related courses in Nigeria are insufficient.
Yes, you were pioneers. I wonder what Odunayo thinks about this. Are things different? Is it better? And, are women starting and growing with STEM today?
I think that, there's an increase in the participation of women in STEM as a group. We're not where we need to be, but the situation is different than, say, 2013 when I first started my first company. The thing that I see though is there's still some reticence, and that's probably owed to societal conditioning and as well as other factors in terms of people deciding consciously, I want to work in tech, or I want to be a programmer, I want to be an engineer. It's today, having seen a bunch of women grow, Kim Waje, Miss Funke Opeke, Miss Omobola Johnson, the female founders that you can see, that there's been kind of a resurgence of the drive to get more women into tech, right? Everyone is now kind of on the gender lens thing, which is a good thing for us, but the rush is, it needs to be more deliberate. There needs to be a deliberate effort to kind of get girls from primary, secondary to university before them saying, we're running training programs for people in tech. Mm-hmm. The training programs are great. I'm not saying they're not. It's just that there is a deeper problem that we are solving from top down instead of bottom up.
So catch them young.
Progress for sure.
Catch them young is what you're saying. And Daniel, do you agree with that? He kept on nodding and being, yeah.
I completely agree. I'm a big fan of both
ladies.
and Odun. I completely agree. So as an example, I take my son and my daughter to a STEM cafe, right, almost every weekend. And I see the difference it's making in how both of them are thinking very equally about the things that they want to try and do.
And there's no difference, even though one is a boy and one is a girl.
Exactly, even though one's a boy, one's a girl. So I think it really starts early. I think to their point, we need to start early, structured policies. And because, the McKinsey report talks about education, financial inclusion, and digital as key points where women are excluded right now. And it starts early, right? So I think making sure it's early, making sure it's in the school system, not necessarily just trying to build it into the current school systems, but leveraging the edtech startups and hubs to really find ways of either alternative or additional educational programs early. I think it would be a big deal in making sure that years from now, we've definitely moved the needle.
So this divide, how can there's obviously a divide. We all agree. All three of you agree there's a divide and there's need to do something. What kind of things can we do specifically right now to be able to move the needle a little bit towards encouraging more women to be in STEM and creating opportunities that will help us close that gap? Doing.
Okay, I think that the pandemic, for example, offers us a real opportunity because a lot of people have become comfortable working from home. And I think those kind of environments can promote and encourage women to stay in the workforce, to thrive in the workforce, if perhaps they could work from home and also, take care of the family front and thrive. I think also, even in the workplace, so if you look at, I keep going back to government because government, I'm a private sector person, so usually I believe if you want things done, do it in the private sector. But then government has this huge leverage, which if it was to move, will make all the difference. So for example, I know that a lot of federal government and state government parastatals didn't fare very well in the wake of the pandemic because they were not prepared digitally.
Absolutely.
However, perhaps in that transition where they're trying to equip themselves, they can make things like workplace pressures available for women so that they're not dropping off. So, because as I said, not only do they have them dropping off STEM, when they come into the workplace, they drop off also. So you might find quite a big bed of women coming into the workplace, young females. But, when they start childbearing or, they just have various challenges, they're first to drop off. They take time off to have one baby after the other. And even if they stay in the workplace, they're not as competitive as they. So I think practices, workplace practices, public and private sector, that deliberately focus on trying to encourage women to be able to cope and cope effectively will help a lot. I mean, those are just two that I can mention.
But I'm just wondering, as I go now to Odunayo, I'm wondering, how old were you in 2013 when you started your business?
I was 19 going on 20. I was 20 by the end.
So what made you different from the regular girls who wouldn't want to do STEM? What discourages young girls from going into STEM that you think we can address?
Well, the parental unit, for one. I think that I was very lucky. Like both my parents were university professors. Both my parents were determined that we express ourselves however we wanted to, including and up to studying engineering and whatever course it is that we wanted. So I'd studied computer engineering in school. Joining a startup was on the heels of 5 years of engineering studies. And before that, it was at age, I think it was 9, when my dad got us our first computer in the house. A lot of the house was filled with books, but all of that is, the resources aside, a lot of it is how are children being molded, right? What are the gender roles that you're drumming into girls' heads in that early stage that you're not doing for the boys? There's kind of a lot of imbalance in how, like, the average girl child is being trained versus the average boy child. In my house, for instance, there was no gender roles. There was just like kids, and my dad could tell me as a girl child go wash the car and my brother would do the dishes. It didn't make any difference. But I knew that it was different because when I was filling my JAM form after secondary school, myself and my dad were sat opposite another classmate and her dad. And her dad actually told her, you can study engineering, you have to do a 4-year course because you have to finish quickly. So at that age, she's already been told that she's been primed for something that's kind of different than what like a normal child is being primed for. I had no such problems. And so I think the parental unit is one that serves as the foundation for fixing any problem that we have around girls' involvement in STEM. When you do that, when parents convince their kids, their girl children, that you can want more, then girls are allowed to dream. And then the problem of like starting a company, getting funding for your company becomes like this other problem we can then solve because there's people who want to do it. It's increasingly better now because we have educated, exposed parents who are determining that their girls have more. And myself and Emo have a company called First Check that's particularly diverting funding towards companies that are co-founded or founded by women. And so, but that has to be built on some kind of foundation, on some kind of like what's called ability to even imagine that you can do it. The second part of it, obviously, is that representation matters, right? What girls see, it's actually really important and is very, very formative. If you see a female like startup founder, then you dream of being a female startup founder. Miss Opake has run Main One for as long as I can remember, and she was one of the first women in tech that we were like ever spoken to about. And that's important when you start your journey. Who are you able to look up to? Do they look like you? Do you think you can become them? So representation, the parental unit, and then you can just like layer all of this intervention from them.
Absolutely. Representation and parental. Let's go to government now. And I just wonder, Daniel, I want you to address that. Is it possible that our country's leadership has in some way not had a very good relationship with technology and that is impeding women's interest impeding their investing in things that will help women technology?
Yes and no. There was a time where I think it would literally just be, yes, they are impeding and they haven't helped the situation. I think there are a few things that they're doing now. So, yes, because, let's think about what it is for technology to actually help women. Mm-hmm. In my view, it's allowing them voice their thoughts, ideas, opinions, connect, empower, right? Women connecting and empowering other women, women creating and solving solutions and solving challenges that are not necessarily just challenges for women, challenges for society as a whole, right? And building their lives and businesses. So, yes, they impede when you do things like shut down a social network. Well, I had Twitter a few months ago, right? Because as an example, and I think Odun was part of the feminist coalition that used Twitter as one of the channels to really drive the movement and the conversation during the NSARS movement, right? Multiple things like that, some large scale, some smaller scale, that are really making a difference to the way people are thinking or waking up to challenges and issues, right? Some fundamental, some financial, some just social issues. So you shut down a network like that. That's a decision made somewhere, but affects so many people. People lost business income because some people were acquiring and managing the customers on there. So on that front, yes, they are not helping at all. Indirectly, I'd say some of the work with the startup bill, which again wasn't, in my view or in my understanding, driven singularly or initially by government, but by individuals within government, right? In my view, that is one of the things that is slowly a change or helping, with my understanding of the startup bill is short-term and long-term, it will help a lot of people, obviously including female-led startups and ventures, right? So I think it's a yes and no, but I do think if I had to pick gun to the head, it would be
more a no.
More a yes that they're impeding. More a yes that they're impeding, or more a no that they're not doing enough. Yes.
So now, Odoyin, can you tell me, I wonder, as someone who's, I'm a technophobe, but my fear of technology had to be confronted when COVID struck. and I realize it's really not much. So given that fact, right, I'm wondering what you think can be deliberate policies that can help open this space, especially because going by what Daniel has just said, it looks like this digital space is one that women can easily work in more. I'm sure you agree with that. So how can government be specific about developing it?
Well, to start with, I mean, the statistics show us that the girl child is out of school much more than the boy child. So they start school later, and we have policies that ensure that they start school in good time and that they stay in school. You know, Odunayo had spoken to some of the sort of role model challenges. So the girl child is saddled with a lot more chores, household chores, parental assistance. You know, that's not going to change overnight. But let's at least make sure that they're actually in school. That's a start. When they're in school, there has to be a consciousness not to discourage them from STEM courses or STEM careers. I once interviewed a young lady many years ago who just started digital jewels. She had an engineering degree and therefore thought, and she had a good degree, we thought she was interviewing as a consultant. And, you know, in the course of the interview, it became clear she was actually looking for a human resource role. And I asked her why, and she looked at me and she said, as if, you know, I didn't know. She said, I'm a woman.
Wow.
I can't be an engineer.
That's self-limitation.
I was shocked. Yes. So we've got to deal with those kind of mindsets. And then we have to make sure that when they actually get into the workplace, as I said, the workplace policies are made. So the different strategies at different phases of the female professionals' lifestyle. And then from an entrepreneurship point of view as well, oftentimes, again, there are norms that make it more difficult sometimes for women to do things like seek funding, to be in Abuja looking for business, and stuff like that. Those kind of unspoken issues need to be dealt with.
That's right.
Or such that if a woman is pursuing her business interest, just like colleagues, there would be no innuendos attached.
I keep
policies around staying in school, staying in school, and staying in professional life, I think would make a huge difference.
I keep hearing things like there are challenges, you know, you have to change policy. It's beginning to sound more like a societal problem. But again, I don't think it's specific just to our country, right? I want Odunayo to address the issue of parenting, right? And not just government, ensuring that with parenting, technology can be something, women can show an interest in and can leverage on to be better.
So I think that it might be easier for me, seeing as I'm not a parent, to address it more from the side where I think the curriculum, as is the teachers and the parents, and plays a very large role in this. The Nigerian educational curriculum hasn't been overhauled ever, and that means that whether we like it or not, even as girls have been allowed to study engineering, they're not studying where the world is right now. The world has left us behind in terms of what we are studying in school. So from there, you're already teaching us like principles and tech that's obsolete. And then there's more girls who are out of school kids. And then there's just like less inclination for them to learn the new technologies. And then it just becomes this domino effect that's just like really awful generally for the participation of women in technology. There's like elementary schools and primary schools right now that have computer as a subject. The unfortunate part that we have is that computer for most people is writing. Actually writing, this is a computer, this is a CPU, instead of kids being taught the basics. If we are going to like infuse the parental unit, like, oh, you have to get your girls into tech, they have to be teaching their girls what is relevant in tech. They have to be teaching their boys what is relevant in tech. And then that exposure is what begins to engender the interest, right? People cannot be interested in what they don't know. As of now, a lot of kids in primary school don't know what they don't know. They don't know what's going on. They don't know, like, people are holding phones. They don't know the founder of the company that, invented that phone. That represents a much bigger challenge. And that is just like concentrated in STEM alone. So you want parents to teach their kids about tech. You want people what's it called? Like people who have like younger kids, take them to STEM cafes, take them to like these
like
clubs.
Daniel.
But they have to know about it. You have to know about it. Knowing about it is beyond just him being fortunate enough to be on social media. It also goes to how much information parents have access to. The problem is very, very layered in a way that prevents me from blaming any one party for it just kind of like not being right. There is a role that we all have to play, the teachers, the parents, and then the government, because the only people who can really bring our curriculum into the 21st century, and then we begin to make those interventions on top of the curriculum change, will be the government.
Thank you. There's never enough time when you're having interesting conversations. But Daniel, as we round up now, I'd like you to say what you think is the most critical thing we need to know if we must leverage on technology in a way that will move women forward and give them more opportunities.
Deliberate exposure and empowerment. Deliberate exposure and empowerment. And I think that cuts across the different parties that Mrs. Odunfa and Odun have spoken to. Exposure, because she's right. If the parent didn't have that exposure, they wouldn't know to get their children the exposure. So there needs to be that social exposure. There needs to be organizations that are doing even more, and government also doing more to show what's possible, to show what's out there, right? So at least you know what you don't know, right? And then empowerment. Definitely not limiting the tech, the hubs, the ventures, the startups that are happening, but not limiting them, but then leveraging them, encouraging them, financing them so that they can do more, right? I mean, there are many, when it comes to EdTech, there's ULesson, there's Alt School, there's incubators, Incubator Africa. There are many of them out there that are trying to do this, right? But they need a lot more access. They need a lot more support. And I think that will help the exposure and empowerment, right? And hopefully it cuts through these layers, and over the next few years, we can look back and say, you know what, we have actually moved the needle.
Which is why I'd ask Adedoyin to her final word should be, let's look at 5 years down the line where, for example, technology is more, where do you see technology in Nigeria 5 years down the line? Where would you like to see it?
I'd like to see it completely mainstream. That means for me that everybody in Nigeria is able to utilize technology effectively. So there are probably two big buckets. The professionals who have to make the industry work and tick and beneficial, and the users. On both sides of the divide, I would like to see quantum leaps whereby, females feel interested, they feel incentivized, they feel as if a technology career is going to be beneficial for them. And for this, we need consistency and intentionality, because we have to, it's not just going to happen that way. We have to make sure that we're very intentional at every stage of development. What kind of targets do we want for females? Okay, so I see I can see a future in 5 years' time where I'm not interviewing an engineer who says she wants to end up in human resources. I would like to be able to come into a forum or a room or a platform and see as many women in the room as men. I would like to also see more female tech leaders spotlighted as mentors, as role models for the younger ones to be able to aspire
to be them.
Career.
So, Odunayo, I think you have just like 30 seconds to tell me what you see in 5 years.
In 5 years, I just see a lot more disruption. I see a disruption of the educational system. I see a disruption of the tech system. And I see a concentration of capital going to women, because the world will finally see that investing in girls and women can be economic and not just impact driven.
Thank you very much to all three of you, Odunayo and Adedoyin, calling in from London. I appreciate you. And thank you also, Daniel, for spending time with us on this podcast. And you all are saying in 5 years, especially as Adedoyin says, technology will be mainstream. Government would have done all the right things, done all the policies, parents will raise their kids, not to limit them. And therefore, with every technology, we just might be able to move the needle a little bit. Are we correct?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.